So I'll be talking about this topic, brain death confirmation. So extremely important topic and very basic to every healthcare professional, and more so in intensive care. I think we need to know every bit about this brain death and other ancillary issues that we may be dealing with in brain death. So I think one thing all of us need to clearly understand, healthcare professionals and us, is so brain death is equal to death. Okay, so there is absolutely no debate in this, and we should have absolute clarity that brain death is equal to death. So that has to be conveyed with alacrity to the family and to the treating teams. So cessation, what brain death is, when there is absolute cessation of activity in the brain and the brainstem. So there's absolutely no activity that arises or that is due to the function of the brain or the brainstem constitutes as brain death. Okay, so that is the basic tenet of what we understand by brain death. So when they looked at a survey done in USA in 2007, so they found there is even in United States there's a lot of variability with regards to the adherence to understanding of brain death is and following certain SOPs laid out, and even with regards to documentation. So there is a lot of gray areas even in the USA amongst the treating practitioners in having clarity about brain death and its documentation. And what they found is the commonest causes of brain death are usually traumatic brain injury, subarachnoid hemorrhage, any intracranial hematoma, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, and any strokes. So these constitute commonly the reasons for brain death. Okay. So anything to do with a organic pathology within the brain tends to lead to brain death. So I think even in India we would agree that most commonest cause would be one amongst these, isn't it? So before even contemplating on ascertaining whether someone is brain dead, there are certain prerequisites. So you should be having absolute clarity on the etiology, because without knowing the etiology of deep coma, so certifying someone brain dead sometimes can be tricky, because there can be a lot of toxins, a lot of drugs, a lot of other conditions which may mimic. So we need to, the first prerequisite, we need to have a reason for declaring someone brain dead, and we need to exclude any of the complicating or other concurrent medical conditions that could be contributing. So we need to have established and ruled out any confounding factors in that sense, and they should not be hypothermic. So temperature should be more than 36 degrees, and we cannot have any sedation on board when we are in the process of certifying brain death. So there should not be any opioid sedation or any toxin on board. So these are some things which should not be present in a patient when we are contemplating on certifying or conducting brain stem functions to determine someone is brain dead. And most importantly, we have to rule out endocrine abnormalities, because if it is suppose a hypothyroidism, so there could be a myxedema coma, and which may sometimes mimic brain death. So we have to rule out endocrine problems if there is a suspicion of one, and there should not be gross electrolyte abnormalities like very hypernatremia, like sodium of 160 or sodium of 108 or 110, hyponatremia, because these all add on or contribute to worsening coma and may mask the possible exclusion of brain death, and any gross electrolyte abnormalities or acid base deficit. So if someone is very acidotic, that also becomes an exclusion factor. So the prerequisites, at least they all should be in some acceptable physiological range, and they cannot have too much of hypotension. Systolic blood pressure should be more than 100, but it could be on supports, but they cannot remain at a very hypotensive and then you contemplate on certifying brain death. So these are some of the basic prerequisites that need to be fulfilled before you can contemplate on certifying someone brain death. Okay, so I think this is an interesting table. So how are the practices in different countries? So as you see, some of the countries, most of the countries, if you see, uh, constitute apnea test as a mandatory for certifying brain death, and this is number of physicians which are needed to confirm brain death. Because in India we know it is four physicians, four doctors. I'm using the word physician for any doctor. So four doctors have to certify before we make a confirmation of a brain death in India. Okay, so if you see different countries, I think in Slovak it is 3, Spain only 1 is good enough. So in India it is 4. And observation time. So observation in India, we know the first set of test is done by 2 doctors, and 6 hours is the time when we do the second set of test. And this is the time. Some of the countries do not have this time. So one test is good enough. As you see, some countries have 6 hours, and most countries, if you see, there are 6 hours, A is absent. So which means they don't depend on the second test. So this is India. So India, we need 4 doctors. Although here it says observation time is absent, so 6 hours is the time that we have an interval between the 2 tests. And observation time also means that patient who after having deep coma, they wait for some time before conducting even the first test. So sometimes, I think I will show you in the subsequent slides, in pediatrics there is a time frame which they wait for 24 hours or maybe 16 hours or 12 hours, which I will show you, before they start conducting the brain death testing. So in India that is not there, which means you don't have to wait. If someone comes post trauma, pupils dilated, everything, and if you believe there is possible absence of brainstem, you can conduct the test once your prerequisites are fulfilled. Okay, that's our understanding. But the 4 doctors remains in India. So 2 doctors do first set, and 6 hours later 2 other doctors do it. So let's go into confirmatory tests. So I think typically when you see a patient with a trauma or any intracerebral event, so you would see them with some decerebrate or decorticate rigidity. So if someone have any movements, that becomes an exclusion. So which means they should not have any of these reflexes also. So there should not be absolutely any motor response to painful stimuli, because this constitutes as a motor response. So decerebrate or decorticate rigidity, where you have extension posturing or flexion, any abnormal flexion posturing constitutes as a brainstem reflex. It's a motor response to painful. So that excludes brain death. So they should not have any of these movements. So oculocephalic reflex or the pupillary. So pupils, obviously the direct pupillary reflex and consensual pupillary reflex both are absent. So that also is very important, that both direct and consensual light reflex should be absent, which tests for cranial nerve 2nd and cranial nerve 3. Okay. And corneal reflex should be absent. So these are all the brain death testing. And oculocephalic reflex, where we call typically as a doll's eye movements, where when the head is rotated to one side, the eyes move to the opposite side. So this reflex should be absent in brain death. And vestibulo-ocular reflex. So normal reflex is when you put cold water, the eyeballs move towards it, and if you put warm water, it moves away from it. So this reflex should be absent. So it should not be present. So this absence of vestibulo-ocular reflex, which is mandatorily needs to be done before confirming anyone as brain death. And gag reflex. So gag reflex, where we put a spatula or you can move the tube and see if there is any gagging. So that should be absent. And cough reflex. So cough reflex, we put a suction catheter and look for any cough that is elicited. So these look at the lower cranial nerves. So this also should be mandatorily be absent. Then we embark on doing something called apnea test. So the way we do it is, I think it's important for any doctor who is out to perform this test. So we put the patient on 100% FiO2 for 10 minutes. Then we need to do an ABG. So after we do the ABG, we have to make sure that CO2 is within normal range. And then you disconnect ventilator, but you put the oxygen catheter, or you can put them on TPs at around 10 to 12 liters per minute, so that they don't desaturate. So typically we wait for 8 to 10 minutes. After that we repeat a ABG, and throughout this it is expected that saturations do not come to less than 95%. Then we repeat ABG, we look for either CO2 more than 60 if you consider your baseline CO2 as 40, or 20 rise. We typically look at 20 rise above the baseline, which makes it easy. And once there is that rise, you see if there has been any respiratory movements. So if there is absolutely no spontaneous breaths, even with CO2 going up to more than 20 from the baseline, then this is the test which becomes confirmatory, clinical confirmation of brain death. So I think there are certain situations where apnea test cannot be performed. Where suppose you are dealing with a patient where his FiO2 needs are much higher. So then it may be hard for us to disconnect to ventilator because they may desaturate very fast. And we have seen in many patients when you are doing apnea test, they may have a lot of hemodynamic instability. They can become hypotensive. They can cause desaturating. So the complication rate attributed only to apnea test can be anywhere between 10 to 26%. And even the sort of basic primitive reflexes like gag reflex is absent, and even sucking reflex is also absent. So these are, although they are considered primitive reflexes, they also should be absent. Sucking reflex should be absent. But having said all this, there can be a lot of spinally mediated movements. I think that is something which should not sort of influence you in making a diagnosis of brain death. So there's a lot of spinally mediated movements. So as I said, brain death is when there is a cessation of cortical and the brainstem activity. But when there is a spinally mediated movements, they still qualify as brain death. So you need to be having clarity on what spinally mediated movements is. So some twitching, like we have typically some twitching of the facial muscles that can still happen. Flexor spasms can happen, and there can be Lazarus sign where there is a flexion of the trunk. So that also will not exclude. Or there can be flexion, supination, pronation of the hands, or triple flexion of these legs, flexion, extension, or passive. All these, I know it may be a little tricky in this setting, but once you have done an apnea test, they're negative. I mean, the apnea test is positive, which means there's no spontaneous breath. Then, if any of these movements are present, and if you are convinced that this is spinally mediated, you can still certify them as brain death. I think that is so. But the crux of issue is apnea test becomes very important. Apnea test and along with all other brainstem. Once all those are absent, if this is present, I think you can, and you are convinced it is spinally mediated, you can go ahead and certify brain death. So observation period is what I was mentioning. So 6 to 24 hours is considered sort of a acceptable observation period for certifying brain death. So if a infant is, I mean, if a child is 7 days to 2 months, then the suggestion is your observation period is for 48 hours. And if a infant is 2 months to 1 year, then the observation period recommended is 24 hours. If it's 1 to 18 years, then observation period recommended is 12 hours. So if it is a post cardiac arrest and who has gone into hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy leading to brain death, then it is 24 hours. So this is the sort of a suggestion or recommendation for conducting brain death in different age groups as per the age. So this was a study which came from US group in 2011. So they did this study in 1229 adults and 82 pediatrics to see whether waiting this much period really makes a difference. So what they found is they did a first test. So when first test was confirmed as a brain dead, in these patients, in the audit they did, they waited from anywhere between 3 to 50 hours, or the mean duration they waited to do the second test was 19.2 hours. So that was the time, and they did a second test. So none of these patients who were confirmed brain dead showed any change when they did the second test, which means your first test itself may be good enough because it's as per the evidence in determining brain death. So second test may not add much value, but waiting for 19.2 hours to do a second test, what it led to is reduction in the organ donation rates. So in India we are waiting 6 hours. So this study really says that you really don't need to perform because first test is confirmatory. There's absolutely no patient where things have changed in the second test. Okay, that's the thing. And number of examiners who do is 2 to 4 across the world. So who is an examiner? I think we need to understand any doctor with expertise on understanding the concept of brain death can certify brain death. And precision by any doctor is found to be moderate to substantial by, this was a study in Canada. And the recommendation is we need to exclude treating primary physicians. Like if there is a physician who is admitted or a cardiologist who is admitted. So the recommendation is it is better to exclude them. and definitely transplant surgeons. They should not be a part of certifying brain death. I think that is something I would want to emphasize. So, what about ancillary tests? Where do you think we would need ancillary tests? Ancillary test is where you cannot do apnea test, because we may have a COPD with type 2 respiratory failure. Where suppose we have seen so many patients where his baseline CO2 itself may be more than 65 or 70. So then getting him to go about 20 from there sometimes can be erratic. So if CO2 levels are very high, or if it's an uncompensated respiratory acidosis of that nature, then we may be mandated to do an ancillary test. Or in a situation where cranial nerves cannot be examined, suppose there is a lot of injury to the eye. So obviously there may be a situation where you may not be able to do cornea or oculocephalic or oculovestibular. So three reflexes you cannot do if there is a massive eye injury. So these are some of the situations where this may arise, where you may have to do ancillary tests. Or we have had patients in our practice who have high FiO2 requirements and hemodynamically very unstable, where we may not be able to do an apnea test. So those are the situations ancillary tests may have to be performed. So obviously when ancillary tests may have to be performed in a situation where you are not able to take out toxin on board, or there are neuromuscular blockers because of distressful movements or any other spinally mediated reflex. So these are situations where you may have to do ancillary test. Or in MODS, multi-organ dysfunction, obviously you may not be able to do apnea test and few other tests. Or you have a very short time and you cannot wait to do this interval testing. So sometimes those may be the situations where ancillary tests may be needed. So the criteria, there are certain criteria for an ancillary test. So any ancillary test that you choose should not have false positives, where you have confirmed brain death, but then remotely they turn out that they are not brain dead. So that should not happen. And one test what you choose should be sufficient to determine someone as brain death, and should not be affected by confounders like sedation, neuromuscular blockers, toxins, or organ dysfunction. Any of these should not have a bearing on interpretation of your brain death or on your interpretation of the test that you do. And the test should be standard, and the technique also should be standard, and result classification also should be very objective. So there should not be subjectivity in the test that you perform. And the test that you choose should be available in your center, because obviously if it is, suppose you have to do MR angiogram and your center does not have, I think it is unreasonable to contemplate on shifting a patient for such test to another place. So ideally you should try to choose a test that is available within your hospital, or typically radionuclide scan. So many centers in India may not have radionuclide. So it may not be reasonable, it may be unreasonable to send this patient to a center for getting radionuclide test. You may have to choose another test. So it has to be available, safe, and ready to use, right? So what are the ancillary tests that has been studied? Cerebral angiography, which is 4-vessel angiography, CT angio, MR angiogram, radionuclide scan, transcranial Doppler, and EG. So these are all some of the tests that have been used. And basically any of these tests, cerebral, CT angio, MR angio, radionuclide, TCD, all these look at absent blood flow to the brain. And that absent blood flow happens when your intracranial pressure has exceeded more than the systolic arterial pressure. Okay, so where your ICP is so high that it has superseded your systolic blood pressure and there is absolutely no flow into the brain. Okay. So this is how typically 4-vessel angiography looks. So this is obviously normal. So here you see it's all empty. So there's absolutely no flow within the brain. And disadvantage is it may be labor intensive, because you have to do an intervention. You have to do a needle puncture and then do a angiogram. And there are reports of some false negative, anecdotal reports. So what about CT angio? So when you do a CT angio, here you see there is no flow. So this was one study which came from the French group in 21 patients which were clinically brain dead, and EEG also patients were proclaimed brain dead. CT perfusion corroborated with these findings only in 10 out of 21. So it may not be the greatest test. And in CT there are caveats. What they suggest as the most sensitive is venous opacification. So venous opacification is what they consider it as a most sensitive sign confirmatory of brain death, and that was found only in 3 of 10. So there was no corroboration in this study between clinically brain dead and EEG brain dead vis-a-vis CT angiogram. So again, which makes it little worrying to do this CT angio as a confirmatory test. And this was another study which came from US group, 25 patients where clinically brain dead CT angiogram showed only 22 corroborated with that findings, and radionuclide scan confirmed or corroborated with it in all the patients, which means radionuclide seemed to be better because clinically brain dead, even in radionuclide, all 25 patients working. But in CT, there was a discordance. So as you see from these two studies, CT angio may not be the best tool. Okay, MR angio sensitivity is good, specificity is uncertain. So I think these two tests should be considered little lower in the order. Definitely not CT angio. I think 4-vessel angio still is rated as a gold standard. I think for all the trainees and listeners, I think you should consider 4-vessel angiography as the gold standard. CT angio definitely has a lot of caveats. MR angio also, we do not know how effective it is. So I think we should put it in that order. Okay. So nuclear imaging is very good because when I was at Royal Adelaide Hospital, we used to do radionuclear imaging for all brain dead patients. So wherever there was a clinically brain death was difficult, we used to do radionuclear imaging, and it will show typically empty skull syndrome. We used to see the images typically like this, absolutely no blood in the brain. So this is very good. If you have ability to do nuclear imaging in your hospital, I think 4-vessel angio versus this you could choose. I think this also is found to be very good. Basically, they have hollow skull appearance and no false positives, which is very good. And this was confirmed by 2 studies which came from Italy and the Spanish group. So CT or MR perfusion is also claimed to be as good as your radionuclide scan. So here you see there is absolutely no blood, so you will see black. Here you see the perfusion where you see highlighting. So what about transcranial Doppler? See, transcranial Doppler, you have 3 patterns. So this is a normal TCD where you see there should be a forward systolic and forward diastolic flow, which is considered normal. So this one is where your ICP goes up, where there is a systolic forward flow and backward diastolic flow. So this is in the second phase, and in brain death you will only basically see a very small systolic forward flow, very small, because there was no blood flow. So here you would see systolic and diastolic. Then in the sort of very high ICP you will see a reversal, forward systolic, backward diastolic. So in brain death you are expected to see a very small systolic spike. So typically you will see this. So this is a normal. As the ICP goes up, it comes like this. Then it becomes a very. So this is typical of heading to brain death. So EEG. So EEG you see typical flat line like this. You see a isoelectric pattern. So which basically tells there's no electrical activity in the brain. But the problem is sometimes these patterns have been found with patients who are on a very deep barbiturate coma or very deep sedation, neuromuscular blockers or opioids or toxin on board. So that is a confounder or caveat with EEG because EEG can be influenced with a lot of sedation or toxin on board. So this isoelectric pattern not necessarily always is confirmatory, especially if you are suspecting any drug being on board. And isoelectric pattern can be an issue in patients with hypothermia, also can have this sort of a pattern. And they can be influenced by artifacts. So these are some things which you need to keep in mind. And it is found to have increased false positives. So that came from these 2 studies, one from Germany and from US. So EEG may not be the best test to determine brain death. But if you do not have any other test, I think our order would be radionuclide scan, 4-vessel angio, and MR perfusion if you have, that also one could consider. And TCD is little more subjective and getting images may be tricky, and EEG would come much lower down the order. Definitely CT angio we saw it had a lot of fallacies. So atropine test, as some of you might have read about it. So this test came basically from a study from Germany where they have validated this test. So they gave 3 mg atropine So post 3 mg atropine, if there is no increase in the heart rate, or there is there is increase in the heart rate less than 3%, pretty much not much increase in the heart rate. I think that corroborated well in this study with brain death, clinical brain death, and the authors claim that it was the last function to loss. So there is absolutely no sympathetic response to the atropine that was given. So heart rate rise less than 3% is considered 3 mg, 3 mg. So I think that's the easy way to remember. So give 3 mg, less than 3% rise in heart rate would corroborate with brain death. And the Spanish group, they did another study to look at the ratio. So when there is a central venous oxygen and jugular venous oxygen ratio, was found to have very good sensitivity and specificity. But this jugular venous seldom is done. So if someone has a jugular catheter, you could consider doing this ratio. But these are just for trainees to know that there are other tests, and this may not be very practically utilized by in most centers. So what are the brain death mimics? So you can have something called locked in state. Hypothermia can behave as a brain death mimics, or any of these neuromuscular blockers, toxins, sedatives, opioids, anything on board can mimic brain death. And Guillain-Barré syndrome, neuromuscular paralysis, some of them can mimic brain death. Okay, so these are some of the conditions which can mimic brain death. So summary, so the diagnosis of brain death predominantly is clinical. So it is CNS examination, and the key prerequisite, you need to fulfill all prerequisites, which is etiology should be known. So they should not be hypothermic, there should not be sedation, neuromuscular blockers or toxins on board, no endocrine abnormalities, no electrolyte disturbance, no acid base disturbance, at least they all need to be in physiological range, no hypotension. So these are prerequisites. And then they should have absent brainstem. So that remains the basic premise. So an apnea test is mandatory. Even in India, just for trainees. So we have had multiple workshops where we have debated this with legal bodies and other experts in this field. So in India, as per the latest Organ Donation Act, if apnea tests do not get fulfilled, this is what after multiple deliberation and discussion has risen is ancillary tests. We have done it in our practice, but after due permission from your authorized regulatory body. So in Karnataka we have Jeevana Sarthakate. We need to update them, talk to them, take consensus from them whether ancillary tests done and approved could be considered as brain death, and then patient could go on for organ donation. This is the current understanding in our state. So it's not like we just do a ancillary test for whoever we think it may be needed and then subject them to organ donation. So we need to get approval from your regulatory body, perform the test, and then only you can certify them brain dead take them towards organ donation. And ancillary tests we have gone through. So you can, so for me, the order of choice in ancillary is 4-vessel angiography remains the gold standard. If you have radionuclide, that also is as good as your 4-vessel angiogram. And only if these two tests are not available, you could consider little other tests. So the other test down, maybe MR perfusion scan may be better. CT angio would come very low, EEG would come very low in the order, and TCD, I think we need it. There may be performer variability, so we need to be very clear with the images and the interpretation of it. So thank you very much. So I would end with this stamp. So basically, this stamp was released by Australia in February 5th, 2008 to commemorate Australian Organ Donor Registry. The reason I put up this is I worked at Royal Adelaide Hospital, which was the largest organ donation center in whole of Australia. And this stamp was released to commemorate organ donation, and the designer was a Sydney-based designer called Nigel Buchanan. So thank you very much. So I'd end this with this quote. So stop cheating on your future with your past. It's over. So when there is brain dead, it is over. So please remember that. So stop, have absolute clarity on that. And please visit my website www.drpradeeprangappa.com so to revisit this lecture and gain clarity if you have any doubts and gain new insights. Thank you very much.